Greetings from the bottom of the ExExistence to you, Society of YouTube, and welcome to this first ExExistence message. Okay, I'm not gonna do that throughout the video like Nostalgia Critic once said, I believe. But first things first, if you're a new viewer, welcome to the channel. Hopefully you enjoy what I can offer you, this being the first for an international audience, well, outside of the Nostalgia Critic videos on the channel, but I don't really count those as my own productions. And for old viewers watching this, don't worry, I won't be changing to English on standard basis. I will be producing Finnish-speaking content, but the reason I'm doing this in English is because I'm here to talk about Ginga Densetsu Weed, or just Weed, both the anime show and the manga. And as you can see, I also have the Ginga Nagareboshi Gin mangas and animes here on display, because I simply cannot talk about this without also talking about this. What I'm going to establish with this video, or this is probably going to be a series of videos because I'll probably ramble so long about this, because this is something I just truly love. I am going to firstly tell about my introduction to the show, the weed that is, and to do that I also have to talk about Gin. And secondly, I am going to list as my reasons for not really liking the anime version of Weed, and why, if you want a good dog anime or dog story, you should focus on the manga or Ginga, or I should say Gin instead. And number three, I'm going to tell you why I believe Gin as a character, especially when you compare the anime versions, is better than Weed. Why I'm doing that, and this video in general in English, is because about a month ago now, when I'm filming this, I saw the Screw Attack Top 10 Dogs video. If you haven't watched it, I guess you should, it's fine. But when it got to the fourth entry, I was just amazed. I was doing something else at the time, the video was kind of playing at the background, and all of a sudden I hear music from Ginga Nagareboshi Gin. He brought back a broadsheet, and sure enough, there was footage of Gin on the screen, and as someone who's American, being Nervous Nick, talks about Gin. And I was like, nobody in America knows what Gin is, and he does? Oh my freaking god! And especially when this is on Screw Attack, meaning someone on Screw Attack knows what Gin is, meaning that my idea of a death battle with Akakabuto could actually become a reality. But then, and he all of a sudden started talking about Weed, and saying how Weed is like Gin, but superior in every way. And at that point my jaw just hit the floor once again, because I just could not believe he just said that. And especially when he listed the three main reasonings for it, to which I will get to later. But it was just, well, I guess I should use the same word I used to comment at the video. It was blasphemy. Why? Hopefully I can explain to you why. But nonetheless, we have three parts to get to, so let's get started with number one, my introduction. And as I said, I cannot talk about my introduction to Weed without talking about my introduction to Gin. Now, it all started with these. Now, these are DVDs, I know, but I originally got introduced to the show on VHS tapes. 4 VHS tapes, like 4 DVDs, of an edited and Finnish translated version, also known as Hopeanuoli, which would translate into Silver Arrow, and it's also known as Silver Fang in English, I believe. And nonetheless, this is how I got introduced to the show back in the mid-90s, when I was like 4 or 5 years old. A friend of mine from kindergarten showed me a clip from the second DVD, or VHS I should say, and I believe that was the third one I just showed the camera, but whatever. And I just got hooked on the idea of a show about a dog fighting bears. Then, and they copied, the family of my friend did, they copied the content of the third VHS tape for us to use. Yeah, piracy, I know, but who doesn't do that nowadays? And it has it's expired crime, because it happened over 20 years ago, so you can't get me on that. and I watched the hell out of that tape. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Then my parents got me the first and fourth one on the VHS tapes, and for some reason I really never got the second one. I only saw the second one because one of my friends had it, and I got the second tape and second DVD into my collections much later. These DVDs actually I only happened to have because a video store that I visited had these used for like a few bucks or euros a piece, and I got hung up in nostalgia and thought that, well, I might not have a VHS tape someday, and DVD players are still, well, I guess someone could say DVDs are dying media too, but at least it's going to stick around longer than VHS tapes do, which have been dead for like 10 years or something. But now I'm rambling, and I apologize for that. I probably tend to do that because even though I have some sort of a script and footnotes, I intend to ramble on a bit, which is why I realized I really didn't give a plot summary of the show. Like I said, Gin is basically about a dog puppy named Gin who's silver color and tiger striped, and because he's tiger striped, a local hunter named Gohei Takeda believes that could make him a good bear hound. It also helps that he happens to be the son of his former dog Riki. And his hunter Gohei Takeda has a grudge against this guy right here in the background, the bear called Akakabuto. Why? Because 5 years before the show takes place, Akakabuto ripped off his left ear, and in response he shot out his right eye. And that's something you're gonna notice if you ever watch either of these shows or read them mangas, that if someone's missing an eye in these, it's always the right eye, which is kind of weird. But anyway, when he shot out Akakabuto's right eye, he caused brain damage to the bear, making it murderous and wanting to eat human flesh. And throughout the show, the goal is to take down this monstrous bear that has been terrorizing the snowy mountains where Gin and his family and friends live. When it gets to a certain point in the show, Gin finds a pack of wild dogs led by a dog who suspiciously looks like his late father, and decides to join the pack in an effort to find dogs all around Japan to stop Akakabuto. And in the end, they have a climactic battle with Akakabuto and his army of bears. Basically, that's the gist of it. It's basically a story of friendship, unity, standing against the odds, and the amazing grow-up journey of an extraordinary little puppy. Something that kids and adults in general can enjoy. And speaking of kids, like I said, this Finnish dub was not only dubbed but edited for two reasons. One, to make it more kid-friendly, even though it still managed to cause me nightmares, not because of the blood, but because one horrifying scene in particular that I will not go to. I'll probably ramble way too long. And it was also done because they had some kind of a budget restriction. How did I say that? Budget limitation, I should say, because they only could afford to bring a certain amount of footage and a certain amount of music, which is why it's kind of weird to watch the show now with some of the portions being completely silent with no background music. Yeah. But that also caused a lot of plot holes to be in the show, which is why about in 2002 or 2001 or 2002, this thing was released. An unedited DVD box called Ginga Naganeboshi Gin Hopeanuoli Silver Fang Special Edition. It's actually kind of funny that this is called Silver Fang Special Edition when there's no English in the whole thing anywhere. But anyway, when I first saw this DVD box, it was like €100, and I was like, no way, I love Gin, but that's way too much for that. But then, when I was browsing through the internet, I found out that this is some kind of an unedited version. And all of a sudden, when I saw what kind of things I had been missing when I had been watching the Finnish dub, €100 was like nothing. I managed to convince my mother to buy this with me. I paid 50, she paid 50. I took the box home, I watched it, and I absolutely loved it. What I thought was already great became legendary. It was something I probably can't describe properly, but all the missing scenes, filling of all the plot holes that didn't make sense to me as a kid, that I had to fill up with either my own imagination or from stories my cousins told me that they had probably come up with themselves to fill in the blanks. But it was just an incredible feeling. Because of that, this show is still maybe one of my favorite anime of all time, if not the favorite. Then they also started releasing the mangas in Finnish, and I just knew I had to collect them all. There's not a big of a difference between these two. It's not like Fullmetal Alchemist, where manga is completely different from the anime, or maybe I should say vice versa. But there's also a small wolf story in the manga that is never addressed in the anime version. It's short and it's kind of anticlimactic, but it was nice to be there. And what made it my Gin nostalgia or my Gin hype, or maybe I should say, blew through the roof was that a few years ago the creator of the show, Yoshihiro Takahashi, visited here in Finland after I guess he realized that Gin was really big here, maybe even bigger than in his home country of Japan. And maybe somebody already saw, but this DVD box set, it has his autograph right there. I'm not really sure you can see it. And I also had the chance to get a picture taken with Takahashi while he was in Finland, and that was probably one of the biggest nerdgasms of my life. But regardless, about in 2006, I believe 2007, and they started releasing the Wii anime here in Finland. I don't really remember where I heard that was going to happen, but because of my fandom for Gin, I was absolutely excited because I'd heard of Gin's son, but I didn't really think I would never get to see it. And I was so excited for the first DVD, in fact, that as you can see from this shirt, I was among one of the first to get the first DVD, because these things were given and to the very first ones to have the first DVD. Now unfortunately this one's kinda small, and because I wore it anyway, the armpits got ripped, and that's why I have a sleeveless version of this. And I actually have two of these because I received another one when I bought the very last, the 8th DVD of the show. But regardless, yes, I was excited as all hell. I got pretty much every DVD the day they came out, and I watched them as soon as I was able, and I liked it. But then, and when I got to the last one, and I got to the ending, my reaction from "oh, this is awesome" kinda became more of like, so that's how it ended? Okay. And then when I decided to watch the show without interruptions, like these things were released once a month, I decided to watch them in one long marathon. Well, as much of a marathon as I could, taking care of my homework, etc. at the time. And what I thought had been good became just okay. And as the years went on, what I thought was okay, it became just bad. Just bad. And I guess this is one of the examples in my life where the ending ruins everything. Well, it's not just that. For the longest time I thought, but now that I rewatched the whole show and read all of the mangas that cover the same story as the anime does, it was pretty clear to me that there was something else in the show, the anime show, or that is, that I really didn't like. That was even bigger reason than the ending. What? We'll be getting into that. Well, after the disappointment of the anime, when they started releasing the mangas in about 2011, or maybe it was 2011 I believe, if it was, When they started releasing these, I was first very skeptical because, like I said, I had been disappointed by the anime, not feeling it was a worthy successor to one of my favorites of all time. But then I was browsing through the internet again, and I noticed various things about the anime that had been removed, that were in the manga version. Probably could have phrased that one better, but I guess that's what you get when you really don't have a script and you're not talking your native language. And I probably have said that stupidly either way. I apologize. But anyway, based on that, I decided to start reading in the mangas. And I believe I hit about issue 6 or 7 when the first major difference has reared its head. And at that point I was like, oh my god, the manga is so much more cool. And when it got closer and closer to the ending, more and more differences occurred, and all of them for better. I mean, after reading in the manga portion and of the story that the anime it covers, I just could not believe. Like, I mean, these two are almost like completely different entities. It wasn't meant to be so, but it's almost a Full Metal Alchemist situation where the anime is completely different from the original manga version. Even though it wasn't intended as such, it tries to tell the same story, but it just does it so poorly and takes out all of the elements that make the thing unique, making it much more simple and straightforward and a closer ripoff of the original show, the original being Gin. And we also find it kind of weird now that I think about it, that the ending credits sequence in Weed kind of tries to hook you in with nostalgia because it involves Weed and another character from the show Mel or Mer in the manga version. I'm not sure if that's a translation thing or why they are different, but still, they're looking at the stars and they see all of the old characters from Gin there, some of which are also involved in the anime, but some who are not. And to me that screams like, hey, remember when we had these guys? Remember when we were awesome? We were awesome too, right? Because we acknowledged them, right? Huh? But it really doesn't work. It just does not work. For reasons I'll get to. But my final thoughts about the manga is awesome. The only real complaints I have about the manga is that Gin manga is 18 volumes. Weed manga is 60. I mean, god damn! Why couldn't you give Gin some more love? I mean, I guess Takahashi wrote more or Weed because it was more successful or something. But when its success thrived, surely he could have given Gin some more, especially when there's such a big time difference between the two shows. Gin would have deserved some more adventures. He got 2, one of which was really just a sidetrack, while Weed got 4 whole story arcs, one of which covers almost half of the whole run of the manga series, that being the one that was adapted into the anime version. And my other complaint is that for Gin, it took a very, very long time for him to have puppies, with mainly Weed if you just look at the anime version or the first arc of the manga. But when Weed's story comes to an end and he's about maybe 2 years old, which is kind of, if you count in the dog years, a teenager, he already gets a bunch of puppies. And that just bothers me, but that's probably a very personal thing because I hold Gin much more closer to my heart. But I think I've rambled on enough about my introduction to the show. Next stuff, probably in a separate video, I'll be going into my top 6, 6, not just 5, reasons why I believe if the Weed anime is a disappointment compared to the original Gin series and its own manga version.